They say performance has an expiration date, but what if they're wrong? No matter where you start, the goal's the same: to be better, stronger, wiser, bolder. We're here for the relentless, those that don't back down, don't compromise, and don't quit. This is training for Masters athletes by Masters athletes, with a community that holds you steady. So say goodbye to random workouts, because whether you're stepping into following a program for the first time or stepping onto the podium, your journey starts here.
All right, team. Welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I am Josh. I am here with Darrin Clement. And Darrin, I'm going to give you a quick intro here. You are a father, you are an entrepreneur, an investor. You've got a background in physics and engineering that is unique. No one has shared that before, so I think that's really cool. I'd love to get into that. You're a 2024 or 25 rather, CrossFit Games qualifier. Your first time qualifying for the games. That's a fantastic accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And you're coming out of CrossFit Amaskag?
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it.
Hey, all right. I might have practiced a few times. Welcome. I'm really grateful that you made time for this, Darrin. It's good to connect.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate that you guys have an interest in what I have to say.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, let's get into it. Like we start many of these, let me first congratulate you again on qualifying for the games. That is obviously a pretty significant accomplishment. You know, anybody that has qualified, and even for those that haven't, know how difficult that is and all of the sacrifice and investment that is required to get there. So congrats, man. Big deal. We're going to save that conversation for the end or towards the end. I want to get more into your background to start. And you shared some really interesting things in the beginning. Your entrepreneurship and your background in physics and engineering. I think there's some really interesting stuff there. I'd love for you to unpack that story a little bit. Like, why do you define yourself as an entrepreneur? What experiences have shaped that?
Well, I wouldn't define myself as an entrepreneur just because I have a physics background or an engineering background. As a kid, I remember I would buy comic books and try to resell them to other people. I had a lawn mowing business. I had a band. I was always starting things. And, even though I guess it was my grandfather, he was a pharmacist but owned his own store. He would never use the word entrepreneur. I didn't know what that was until much later. I just knew that I felt most comfortable starting things. And physics was more of, when you're growing up and you're surrounded by people who are giving you that message that college is the right plan. Like, you're successful if you go to college. At least that was my experience. And I was, I think, the first in my family to go to a 4-year degree college. Anyway, my point being that I needed something somewhat respectable to do. What I really wanted to do was be a musician. I really wanted to be a rock star. And not a rock star from the fame and women and all that, although some of that would have been okay. It was more, I loved writing songs. I loved producing. I loved managing the band. All of that was really exciting to me, but that wasn't respectable. And so I went to college for physics. After that, I really liked it, but I wanted something a little more practical. So I got into engineering. Got my master's degree in engineering and then was in the PhD program. And I laugh now because I'm like, I am not Mr. PhD. I have a daughter right now who's in a PhD program and it's perfect for her. But for me, that's not me. And
As a rock star in the PhD program, I see.
I'm not sure rock star is me either, to be honest. What I realized after a couple of years in the PhD program is that I just wanted to start companies. And so I left I went to my advisor and said, I can't keep doing this. And I promptly started 3 companies and all 3 failed.
What did you start?
I'm sorry.
What companies? What were you experimenting with?
So they were all related to what I was doing. So my graduate work was fiber optics related and lasers.
Hmm.
So a buddy and I started a company. I think we called it S3 Optical Software. And we were going to essentially write software that helped labs at engineering schools create models for how light goes from lasers through lenses into optical fibers. I won't bore everybody with all the technical, and to be honest, it's been almost 40 years, so I don't know if I'd really remember it. But back then we were like, hey, there's money to be made here. And I think there was, we just didn't know what we were doing. So that's one of them. Forget actually what the second one was. And then the third one was just consulting. And I made a little bit of money consulting, again, in the fiber optic area,
Hmm.
but it was not enough. And then I met the person that would eventually become my wife, and I needed a real job. And so I put some of that entrepreneurial spirit on hold for a little while. But even though I'm no longer married, she was an amazing partner in the respect that when I needed to stop working and start a company, she was like, okay, like we'll figure out how to make this work.
Hmm.
Um,
That's incredible. Yeah, because certainly that's not the case for every married couple where one
no,
is very entrepreneurial minded.
no, and it was hard. You know, you have kids, and I'm sure some of the people listening to this are entrepreneurs, and some of them have had the same experience I have, which is that thing of like you've got this inner drive to do certain things your way and to start companies, but you've got these mouths to feed. And even if you have a wonderful partner that you can, share the burden with, you still have that competing pressure to
Hmm.
say, how do I be who I truly am and provide for my family, which is also who I am. I'm also, I want to be a provider. I mean, I'm a multifaceted human. And I'm sure a
Hmm.
lot of people listening have struggled with that. And it was hard. It was not easy. I'll skip over a few things. We can go back if you want, but ultimately I did have a very successful company. And that, success makes everything easier, right? Whether we're talking about CrossFit or business or parenting, when things work, they work. And it's
Hmm.
smooth and you feel like the stars have aligned. Um,
You can
and it was a
appreciate the
really good time.
failures and all the mishaps because you've already had the success.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
the
yeah.
success is absent, all those failures and mishaps feel like that's the only thing
Well,
that you
yes, because
should.
if all you've done is failed,
Yeah.
you can have all the self-help in the world saying that's not how you define yourself. Don't define yourself as your failures. But if that's all you've had,
Yeah. It's heavy.
what else are you supposed to do? You know?
Hmm.
But yeah, once you've had a success, you're like, yeah, I'm a success.
Yeah.
That becomes who you are?
Overnight.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Overnight success.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you, I don't even know how to ask the question, but you had mentioned like you wanted to be respectable, essentially. You needed to go into a profession that was respectable. Being a musician, a rock star wasn't, even though that was really where your passions were. So it was, I don't even know, like your desire, I don't think was the thing that drove you to be respectable. It was probably, if I'm guessing, you needed the perception to be respectable, whether that's parents or whatever. I'm curious, where did that come from? Kind of two questions. Where did that come from? And then how were you defining respectable? If being a rock star wasn't, what were the things that fell into that respectable bucket and who was that defined by?
Good questions, and probably to really probe that, we'd have to turn this into a therapy session.
Let's go
Um,
where we're going.
Certainly, if I think back to my parents were not against the music career, but they were not particularly supportive. Um, I all I could say is the thoughts going through my head were, how could I have a family and be a rock star?
Hmm.
And I guess that's we can try and figure out where that dichotomy came from. But in my head, as an 18-year-old, I knew I wanted a family. That was probably the most important thing to me. And at the time, I didn't have a wife or kids. So I was like, well, all right, well, how do I set my life up to support that ultimate goal?
Mm-hmm.
Rockstar over here, physicist over here. Well, as an 18-year-old, it seemed to me like, no, like rock stars, if they get married, they just get divorced and they have a crazy life. They're on the road, all these temptations, drugs, women, all that stuff. Or physicist, a little dorky, but, great stable way to have a family.
Yeah, yeah.
But where did that come from? Josh, I honestly don't know how to answer that right now, except to say that it was a voice in my head. I just don't know where it came from.
To me, you've answered the question pretty clearly, which is like you had a very clear desire to have a family, and you probably desired, and with a family came some kind of model for you, which was like a stable household, and whatever that looked like, it had some characteristics to it, and one path provided that, and one path probably inhibited that outcome, and so boom, that steered you to that, and that
Yeah.
makes total sense to me. Yeah, that's really interesting. Um, yeah. Well, now I'm curious. You've talked about a couple of the failed businesses and one that was very successful. Like, where did you find your success, and was it still in the same field that you were pursuing early on?
No, I guess the short story there, I did start another business at some point. It failed. So then I was like, all right, I got to get another job. We wanted to raise our kids in a particular part of Vermont where my wife had grown up. And I applied for a job at I'll simplify it and just say a mapping company. And I loved that job, but I was hired at a level above my ability to perform,
Hmm.
which inevitably meant I was fired. But the number of jobs that I've either been fired from after one day or quit after one day, we could fill 20 minutes of the podcast just with that. But in this case, I was there for about 2 years, loved it, but was in over my head. CEO came to me and said, "This just isn't working." It was an amicable separation, but it was definitely I was fired. And skipping over a few nuances, I had an idea for something related to that and was able to get something going. My mom did lend me some money. Gosh, back then, maybe it was like $10,000 or something.
And how old are you at this time?
I'm going to say 30.
Okay.
Yeah, probably around 30. So that company, it was called Maponics. There's not too much on the web about it now because it's been sold and, absorbed into other companies. But that was a mapping company that I guess I ran it for about 13 years, then brought in a CEO to replace myself, and then sold it about a year later.
Okay. So you're with it for 14 years before selling.
Yes.
Okay. So you've committed a ton to it then. It was
More
not
than
an.
I wanted to. Let me tell you, my plan,
Yeah.
just my plan was build it and sell it in 5 years. That didn't work. I mean, 5 years, it was just starting to work. First few years, I loved it. Don't get me like those first few years, I was selling, I was programming, I was cleaning, I was hiring, it was such a rush. But it was the kind of thing where every dollar of revenue had 99 cents of cost. So we were still scraping by as a family. But right around year 5 or 6 is where things started to get interesting and started to get better. And then it was just, trying to keep building until it had enough value that somebody wanted to buy it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, without going super deep into, which I am curious, by the way, of what this is, who your audience, what I'm in the business of helping support many businesses as well.
Yeah.
And so we're always looking like, what's our distinct value prop and who's our audience and how do we get that in the hands of our customers and make that a great experience. The takeaway that I'm hearing is like, look, it just takes some grit. If for those entrepreneurs out there, having those overnight successes and those unicorn businesses are just so incredibly rare. I think what people would find, even your experience is rare, right? To build a business and be able to sell it and be successful in doing so, I think many people would say, sign me up for that.
Yeah.
It takes 14 years, sign me up. I'll take that. But the truth is, they have the vision of the 5 year and sell. They get 2 years in and realize how difficult it is and go, gosh, we got to make some decisions here. I do have mouths to feed. I do want to achieve this family dynamic that I've envisioned in my life. And
It's much easier to just go get a job.
much easier, just go get a job. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I don't have the similar dream as what you have accomplished. I would love to be able to go build something. I don't have the chops to go build it. Now, the fact that I get to be with Boulder, now we're building something. And so that is really cool, actually.
Well, and every business. So I've done a lot of work with startups. I continue to do a lot of work with startups. And you need multiple personas within that startup environment. There's, we can talk about the cliche definition of the visionary, without getting into all the different personas. I don't know you personally, Josh, but like, you don't have to be the one who starts something. You can be the one who is uniquely contributing to the growth and be an integral player. And you still get that rush of entrepreneurism, but there's a little less risk because somebody else has started it and you're coming in. And again, I don't know anything about your particular situation or past situations, but you come in 6 months, a year into it, and you get a lot of that feel, but there's a little bit of a safety net there. It's not a lot of safety net, but there's a little bit. And then, of course, once a company starts, and I've said this to my kids as well, you can be entrepreneurial within a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurism is a frame of mind. It's a set of behaviors that doesn't have to manifest in literally going to the Secretary of State, creating an LLC, coming up with a business proposition, doing everything for, raising money. No. If you can take any resource from one value to a higher state of value, you're being entrepreneurial. If you are an accountant in a big company, you can be entrepreneurial. Most of us true entrepreneurs, and I say that, making fun of myself, we kind of dismiss that. Oh, you can't be an entrepreneur if you're an accountant. The truth is you can be entrepreneurial. Maybe you don't have the capital E in front of it, but you can be entrepreneurial. There are still ways to innovate within accounting, especially in a company that has dysfunctional accounting. And so in your case, if you had to define yourself, would you define yourself as entrepreneurial? Is it something that's been a pattern of yours your whole life, or is this something newer?
That's a really good question. In the way that you've defined it, you're certainly making me feel entrepreneurial because I do like to build things. I do like to solve problems. I am a creator at heart. It just takes on maybe non-traditional forms of creation. I'm also risk averse. And so that risk aversion, I think, has ultimately been one of the primary things that's kept me from putting my neck on the line and going starting from scratch. Because I resonate deeply with what you said early on, which was like, look, I want a family and I see myself as a provider for my family. I know the childhood that I grew up in, and I wanted to hit the reset button for myself and create a different kind of lifestyle for my kids and create a place of incredible stability and opportunity, things that I didn't have. And that is priority one for me. And so that has steered me towards finding a job that's really stable, that does have a good income. And I try to be entrepreneurial within that job. Hey, what's a new way we could do this? And that's a lot of ideation, brainstorming, and execution, experimentation, all the things. And so, yeah, I think there is, like what you said feels spot on.
Well, good for you for being self-aware enough to know that you're risk averse. One of the worst situations as an investor or just as an individual is when you think you're a risk taker. Actually, I don't even like the word risk taker. Let's use your phrase. When you're not aware that you are risk averse and you're trying to pretend to be something else, because then you make such bad decisions that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're afraid of risk and you just create it all the time in ways you don't need to.
Yeah.
So good for you for having a clear vision of what you want and being self-aware enough to know that completely being on your own and taking on all of the risk is not for you. And
Yeah.
that's
And
fair.
right, and I think there's a lot of folks that probably are somewhere close to that, which is like they've got ideas that they want to pursue, but that's a lot to do. It requires a lot of cash up front, and maybe that's capital you're unwilling to part with. It also requires sacrifice and time that I really don't want to compromise from my family. And you said this up front, and it struck a chord with me. Is like, that is me. That's where I'm at. And insert Boulder. Gosh, it was like the perfect opportunity. Not
That's
only the
great.
guys were great, the business has got some real, opportunity for growth. I do feel like I'm uniquely contributing to that. Even though I'm not going to sit down and code anything, we have a guy who's fantastic at that, and we've got guys that bring other unique skills to the table. And it's squarely dead center in a place that I'm passionate about, which is fitness and helping people and building community and all the things. So
That's great.
yeah, I'm grateful for this. But let's not go there. I could go on and on about all of that. I want to continue to focus on you. Thank you for sharing what you have shared. I know that we have some really entrepreneurial minded folks within this Boulder athlete community, and I have a strong feeling that they're going to hear some part of what we just discussed and go, "Ooh, yeah, there's something there that strikes a chord with them." Well, that's cool. Let's shift gears a little bit we're going to stay within your background, but you had mentioned you were not an athlete growing up. Now, once again, you've qualified for the 2025 CrossFit Games. So you are an athlete now, and you're a heck of an athlete. You were in a very elite category, but you were not an athlete growing up, which many were. Many that I have interviewed have said, hey, I played sports growing up, and it was just kind of always part of my life, and I had this competitive drive, and it just took me, all over the place, but they ended here. Your story is different. Tell me about what that was like for you.
Well, so I was born congenital cataract, and at the time, not repairable. So I've been blind in one eye my whole life.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine as a kid, like trying to catch a ball, trying to hit a ball, like
Okay.
really difficult, really difficult. And I had a couple cousins. I'm an only child, but I had cousins that I hung out with, a couple of whom were great athletes. So kind of like we were talking earlier about those things that define you, when you repeatedly can't catch a ball, and that is what you understand to be the definition of athleticism, you assume you're not an athlete. So it never would have even occurred to me as a teenager that I could ever become an athlete. Just wasn't even on my radar. Nothing. You could have listed 100 careers and half of them would have been athletes, and I still would have said there's no way I could have possibly been an athlete. That said, I played football on the line, in like Pop Warner, but I wasn't very good and didn't really enjoy it. And so no athleticism really until probably around the same time that I started Maponics. I had kids and I was thin but soft around the middle and kind of just like, oh, I need to get healthy somehow. And I didn't know anything, so I started running because that's what I think a lot of people do when they don't know what else to do.
No, why not? Anybody can do that.
Got into it, lost a lot of weight. Didn't really ever enjoy running, but I got really skinny and really kind of gray. Like my skin was gray. Like it was just, at some point I saw a picture of myself and I said, oh, this is not okay. That was after maybe 3 or 4 years of running.
And what year is this? How old are you at this time?
Probably by this point, maybe early 30s. I had started Maponics. I know that. Yeah.
Okay.
And so then I just bought like some cheap set of used weights, had it in my basement, didn't know what I was doing, but gained a lot of muscle pretty quick. Um, I don't know, somewhere I've got it written down, but I was pretty happy. But
Well,
I was,
you don't consider yourself an athlete at this time.
oh, no, 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 no.
Your body is actually physiologically prepared to be an athlete.
It's starting. It's starting, I mean, at that point, I'm still running. I'm lifting some weights, not knowing what I'm doing, but still would absolutely be defining myself as a father and an entrepreneur. I was building my company. That was the number one priority. Anything I was doing for fitness was just to try to produce some health for my future grandchildren to have a grandfather to play with. That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But and gosh, I know you're going to ask me when. I don't remember when. I would say somewhere around 40, I started getting the bug of like, well, I want to compete. Like this whole thing of just sitting in my basement, this is just like, what am I doing? And I think that desire to compete still wasn't, oh, I'm an athlete. It was more just, if I'm doing something, I want evidence of the result. So you could,
Yeah. We'll quantify it.
yeah, I need it exactly. So, me sitting there doing curls in the basement or bench press in the basement, like what is that actually proving? So I was
Yeah.
like, well, what am I going to compete in? I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I don't know how to Olympic weightlift. I should sit back up. I was doing a little bit of competing in obstacle course races.
Hmm.
Um,
You're getting a bit of that like itch. Like
yes.
competing is fun. You're getting a taste of it,
Yeah.
but in a very different realm. And now you're trying to put it to use elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to say it. Because even when I was running, I would do races. So maybe without me even realizing it, and some of your questions are maybe making me realize it now, I was actually getting some early chops in for being an athlete because I didn't just run. I would do little races. And I think I only did maybe one half marathon, but I would race. I wasn't any good, but I would still do it. I wanted the objective measure of, okay, what's my 10K time? What's my 5K time? And so yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry that I'm kind of like now lost in my own head because I'm trying to figure out what was really going on in my mind back then, and I don't remember.
Hmm.
But obstacle races were another way of exhibiting performance in some kind of a measurable way. If there were 700 of us in a Spartan race and I was number 70, okay, top 10%. That's pretty good. That kind of thing was always in my mind, actually.
This might be a terrible analogy, but I'm trying to connect these worlds of you as an entrepreneur and you as like this kind of now developing early athlete. There is this moment like as an entrepreneur where you're investing your time and energy and resources into the business and you want to know like has the value increased? And you're kind of asking that. And when you go to sell, that is the most obvious way to quantify the value. In training, you're investing in your basement, at first, and you're like, well, what's this ultimately amounting to? Is the value, your fitness, your capacity, is that increasing? You start to get into racing a little bit. You're kind of getting a sense of now, well, it is amounting to something because I am wherever I am in the competitive field. And so competition is like the payout. It's like,
Yeah.
where is the value? That is the easiest way to quantify where you are relative to the market, relative to the competitive field. I don't know, I'd be shocked if you said, yeah, that's how I thought about it. I don't know if anybody would think about it that way.
Yeah.
But it kind of,
The
you
way
can
you're
see
saying it makes total sense, though. Like,
yeah,
yes.
there's a connection there. Interesting. Okay, so then you're like you haven't got into CrossFit yet. It sounds like where does CrossFit insert itself? You're
Oh, yeah.
racing a little bit. You're maybe building some stuff in your
Okay. Yeah.
basement.
So there's a chunk in there that is important and where I started to become an athlete. At least at the time, I started saying, oh, maybe I am an athlete. Maybe. Um, I started just talking to different friends and like, hey, I feel like I need a coach or I need somebody to help me figure out what to do because I feel like I want to do something in the strength world to be more competitive. Like I love lifting weights, but I don't really know. And so I eventually got put in touch with a guy named Carl Wallen. He had recently retired after maybe 40 years as the track and field coach at Dartmouth College. And he was, at no charge, teaching people how to Olympic lift, how to do powerlifting, and how to do the throwing sports of track and field. So,
javelin, shot put, discus.
yes, and hammer. And I did all of those except for jav. I never did javelin. But anyway, I connected with him and started learning all of those. And he was very much, if you're training with me, you're competing.
You need to go prove how well his training is paying off.
Yes. So he's one of these guys. I owe a lot to him. And one of the things that in his mind, at that point in his career, he's maybe 70 or whatever, he was still competing, but he was way past his prime. He had done Olympic trials when he was younger. He had achieved a lot. So his success at 70 was how many of his athletes were winning at the local powerlifting meet or the Olympic lifting meet or the track and field meet. So I definitely relate to that. So that lasted maybe 10 to 12 years, something in that rough range. And I would compete. I got okay at those. We can go over some stats if you want. The question, though, of how I got involved in CrossFit, my first exposure to CrossFit was when I would travel and I needed a place to do Olympic lifting. The only places to do it were CrossFit gyms. So I'd be off in the corner. I'd call and say, yeah, I haven't done any kind of CrossFit. I haven't taken any introduction classes. I want to drop in. I just want an Olympic lift. And at least back then, sometimes I'd be told no, but got acquainted with CrossFit that way. I'd be in the corner and I'd look around and I'd see what people are doing. And I admit the whole kipping thing, man, I was like, what are these people are going to absolutely throw their shoulders out of the socket. How do they think this is good? How do they, why don't they just do strict pull-ups? What are they doing? Well, whatever. I'm going to go back to my Olympic lifting. And then I'd get to know people at some of the CrossFit gyms, and they'd be like, you should come do a class with us. Well, what is it? You're not doing the kipping thing today, right? No, we're just going to do deadlifting and burpees. I'm like, I can do deadlifting and burpees. Okay. And so I jump into a class here or there.
Yep.
And I started to like CrossFit, but I didn't do none of the gymnastics. If there were gymnastics in there, I would just do them straight. I just wasn't going to do them. And when I say just do them strict, I mean, it's not like I was great at them. But I would participate. And what really changed, and this is now, I guess, about 3.5 years ago, I was at the gym that I would normally train at for my Olympic lifting, the CrossFit gym, CrossFit Amoskeag, you said at the beginning, and they were putting on a competition, and they needed some volunteers. It was like, all right, I'll load plates, fine. My mind blew at how electric the competition was. You've got 8 guys on the floor at the same time, trying to beat it, and they're really the 2 front guys are really close, and the crowd is screaming. You don't get that in Olympic lifting. You don't get that in powerlifting. You get some screaming in powerlifting, but it's not like you don't have 8 guys squatting at once.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I have to get into this.
Yeah. You're like, I want to be on the floor. I want to be the guy they're screaming for.
Exactly. And so the next week, I went to one of the main coaches there and I said, okay, I want to hire you to teach me CrossFit. And that's where CrossFit started.
That's where it began. That's really cool. That's a unique story. I like that. I mean, you basically you saw CrossFit, you were exposed to it, and you made a conscious decision to say, no, that's not for me for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then it was the competitive environment not at the highest level, but at a peak time where competitors are clearly going at it, the crowd is roaring, and you said, "This is something I want to be a part of."
Yeah.
And that's what drew you in. That's so interesting because, it's different for so many people. Like for you, it was that competitive environment that drew you in. You said, that's the thing I want to be a part of. For many, they would say, if this is what CrossFit is, that's not for me. Instead they would be drawn to some other flavor of it, which is like the community in the gym of the three, women or the three men or whatever, that was just the most intimate little private thing that satisfied a need that they had in their lives at that time.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the cool, one of the great things of CrossFit, right? Is like it will be what you make it. We're going to have some shared fitness and health and community along the way. And then you can kind of, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want it to be really competitive? Well, gosh, you can make it really competitive. Do you want it to just be fun and social? Heck yeah. It can be fun and it can be social. And there's 1,000 variations in between. That's cool. Okay, so now you got a coach. He's coaching you up. You're making some progress. Boulder. Where does Boulder come in? And at what point in your journey, how old are you? How many years have you been doing CrossFit now? Where's the Boulder train start?
I guess, I mean, because I've only been doing CrossFit for a short time, it's pretty easy to kind of walk through the timeline of, I worked with that coach through the open of that first year. What that would have been 23. Yeah, 23. Um, and got to the quarterfinals, was very happy, um, and then
Your first year. This is your first year doing the Open,
yeah.
and you made it to quarterfinals your first year. Very cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it
great
was
to hear.
very. I think that year the rules it was 10%.
Or maybe even 25%. Or
No,
maybe the first
24
year
was
was,
25%.
yeah,
23 it was just 10%. I think whatever it was, it doesn't matter.
I think you're right. I think you're
I
right.
made it, but one of the things, the reason that that's important isn't like to brag. It was just more the idea of like it reinforced the concept that okay, if I put in the time, I can objectively get this measurement that
Yeah.
I'm doing okay. And so, I didn't realize CrossFit changed the rules every year about quarterfinals because in my mind, I'm like, because I think I like just squeaked by. I think I was like the 91st percentile or something like that. And so I was like, all right, so next year I need to be the top 92nd percentile.
Hmm.
That's how you do goals, right?
That's
And
right.
then you changed everything. Um, but I did try a few different programs to get to your question. And including another coach that I worked with for a short period. But in the end, it's very hard for me to follow any program for me. It's that entrepreneur thing of like, I need to be taking control. I'm responsible. The coach isn't responsible for my performance. The organization that's writing the programming isn't responsible. I'm responsible. And if I'm
Yeah.
responsible, I'm not going to take something blindly. So for a long time, and even still, I do a blend, and I always sprinkle in my own things. And I think
Hmm.
that's an important thing for the people that I talk to are like, oh gosh, you qualified for the games. How can I get to the games? I think it's really important if you want to be a high level at anything, you have to learn from the best, but internally ask yourself, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And how do I shore up my weaknesses? And how do I emphasize my strengths? No canned program is going to do that for you.
Yeah.
So I was kind of shopping around a little bit, but one of the things that I was missing was I was kind of back in that world of when I was being an Olympic lifter on my own in the corner. I wasn't an Olympic lifter, I was a CrossFitter, but I was a CrossFitter in a CrossFit gym off in the corner doing my own thing.
Hmm.
And I missed that kind of group dynamic of being part of a team. And one of the guys in my gym, CrossFit Amoskeag, Alan, Alan, if you're listening, giving you credit here. He's like,
Shout
yeah,
out.
I've been doing Boulder. I think at that point, I think I started with Boulder in January of this year. And he had been maybe doing Boulder since maybe the prior summer or something like that. And then I'll also call out Peter in my gym. Absolutely loves Jason. He's competed alongside Jason in a few events, and he just thinks Jason's the best thing ever. And so between the two of them, I was like, okay, I think if I get onto this Boulder, and maybe if we get Keith and Derek and maybe a couple other guys onto Boulder, we can have like a little bro session where we're all essentially doing the same programming.
Yeah.
And that's what cinched it for me, was the idea of, okay, there's now going to be enough of us that we're all going to customize it a little bit, and we're all in different age groups, but we still, to this day, like, we'll send a note, like, first, whoever does the workout first, one of the workouts first, send a note to the others being like, dude, how did he think we could possibly get 5 rounds in that? Like, there's no way. And then Derek will jump in and he'll be like, oh yeah, I finished 4.5. And we're like, 4.5? How could you even finish 4? And Derek's like, well, I'm really good at this. And I guess that's, that got me through it. And then that team atmosphere, and I'm using the word team as opposed to community. I know a lot of people go to CrossFit for community, and I would define it slightly differently. Community is a less distinct group of people that and it's familiar faces, and you're good to see them, and you talk to them about whatever, and you feel like you're part of the group. But a team, you're all looking to qualify for MFC. You're all looking to qualify for Legends. You're all doing the same programming and comparing notes and giving each other tips. That, to me, for me, is more than a community. But I completely understand why people get community value from CrossFit. But that's not, I got into Boulder for the team aspect.
That makes total sense to me. And I think those definitions work great. And I totally see the value in both. But before I go on that, do you have an oscillating fan near you? Because like it's very subtly going, and then it gets super loud.
Really?
And then it gets quieter. And I feel like there's a fan that's like blowing into your mic or something.
No,
okay, anyways.
my AC's not on. I'm sorry, man.
All good.
I don't know what it is.
So back
maybe I'm sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Is that what's going on?
That had to be it. That had to be it.
Do you still hear it?
No, I don't now. Now that I've called it out, it's vanished. Okay, whoever
it's
that
a ghost.
was.
It's a ghost.
What? Like community, I really like this. So let's unpack it for a second. CrossFit has real strength in community. And I think you're right in that it is a big, broad, group of people, but not necessarily everybody within that group is aligned in the same objective. Their objectives are different. In some cases, it's social, like we talked about a bit ago. In some cases, it's really competitive. And you're then saying, hey, team, and I played a whole lot of team sports, so this actually feels real to me. You're very aligned on the objective. It's a collective objective. Football, for example. Hey, we're trying to win. That is the objective. And everybody's got a responsibility in how we're going to do that. And so we are very clearly aligned on doing the same thing, and we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. We all contribute uniquely. And while certain elements of that aren't totally true in the way that you're defining team, the alignment on the objective is still there, which is y'all want to compete with each other and then get into a qualifier and be competitive in the qualifier, or get to the event itself and be competitive there. I like that. And that feels real. And I've got this group, we call ourselves the Wolf Pack, and it is that group. It's my group of buddies, just like your group of buddies. And I wake up every morning to them going, how in the hell were we going to do this? And I can't believe that this is the workout, and how much volume are we doing today? And, that's what I wake up to each morning.
Cool.
Sometimes it's comical. Sometimes it's like, oh man, here we go again, guys.
Yeah.
But they're good dudes, and they're all well-intended, and we're certainly aligned on the objective. And yeah, I find a tremendous amount of value from those group of men.
Right.
Darrin, you said a couple things, and while we're on this topic of Boulder, I want to hear your thoughts on You had mentioned like your personality type, and you talked about this a bit ago, like you need to take over some control and feel like you're essentially customizing it to yourself, which, by
Yeah.
the way, I could not agree more with. I have given this guidance so many times over. Unless you have a one-on-one coach, the program is never going to be perfectly aligned to your specific needs.
Yeah.
It's just the chances of that happening are so small. Instead, you need to take that program as the backbone, and then you probably are going to have to make a couple accommodations based on where your strengths are and where you need to build more capacity. That should probably be the truth for most people, regardless of how competitive you are. And so I like that. Now, you had said um, you're doing that, you're taking control. I love that. I think that's great guidance from a lot of athletes. You said you love the structure and the focus on masters. What I want to get your perspective on is, in what ways are you feeling the focus on masters? What ways do you feel that? What ways are you experiencing that? In your experience in CrossFit, what stands out in like how Boulder is uniquely focused on masters?
Well, I need to caveat it by I'm still relatively new to CrossFit. So I don't have a decade of experience to really compare, but it's kind of everything. I mean, obviously each of the tracks have scaling for the different age groups. That's not necessarily unique to have scaling for age groups, but I guess if I had to answer it in one sentence, it would be the way Jason talks. Jason talks about Boulder as being focused on masters. Every communication he makes seems to be about masters. And knowing enough about business to have seen people easily get distracted by shiny objects and suddenly well, yeah, we were all about masters, but now we're also about teens. And now we're also about high rocks. And now we're also about, you know, I don't get the sense that Jason is going to be doing that because he seems very consistent with how he talks about it. That's probably the most unique thing I've seen because the other options out there for similar types of programs, they're trying to be everything to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's successful, but I think Boulder really, again, putting on my entrepreneur hat, Boulder has a real opportunity to dominate the masters CrossFit space. I mean, I don't know what went on behind the scenes for you guys to be involved with Legends this year, but that's huge.
Mm.
As long as you guys don't suddenly say we can now be everything to everyone in CrossFit, I think you can really own it because the programming is great. Jason's great. I don't know you, but in this conversation, you're great. I assume the team is great. So you guys know how to execute. The question I would have, again, this is when I'm an investor or whatever is, if I'm going to invest in you, can I trust that you're not going to get distracted?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
it's going to be so tempting because there's a lot more people doing CrossFit in the, if you just open it up to 20 to 34, just open it up. There's a lot more people there. It's a lot more money. But is there? Is there a lot more money?
Yeah.
Yes, in an objective sense, but in a subjective sense, I think you would start losing a lot of the masters because now you're just like company X or just like company Y and
That's right. You lose your differentiation and
yeah,
focus.
yeah,
You're so spot on, and we've had this exact discussion. And there are shiny things that pop up, and you go, "Hey, let's talk about the shiny thing to talk about it, and let's see where we land on this." And where we come back to time and time again in all of these like interesting growth opportunities. Like, by the way, we're in the growth business. Like, we are trying to grow,
yeah,
but we know where that growth is going to come from. And we have a very clear sense of how that's going to take place. And it comes from laser focus and really calculated decisions. And Legends was one of those. And man, you want to talk about just the perfect fit. We just did a podcast, was the last one with Joe Linton, the co-founder of the Legend Championship. And Jason was on that as well. We got to talk about how that partnership came to be and boy, we couldn't be more excited about it. It's just a really good opportunity for both of us, and it doubles down on our focus on, hey, we're going to serve these masters because we know that the opportunity is there, our focus is there, the growth is there, and we're going to not get distracted. At the same time, know that, hey, is this great programming for teens? You bet. Is it great programming for elites? Yeah. But we know where our focus is. And we've got Daniel Dabrowski as a teen who part of this Boulder athlete community, and he's going to the CrossFit Games. And that is just so cool. So you
Well,
don't have to be older to be Boulder. It's great
right.
for everybody.
And there's a difference between being so good at what you are that other people want part of it. So in this case, being so good with the masters community that a kid wants to be part of it, or that some other young person wants to be, or even a High Rocks person wants to be part of it. That's okay.
That's right.
That's a sign of success. What is a sign of distraction, though, is when you start marketing to the teens or start marketing to the High Rocks folks. You don't want to say necessarily no to them. I'm not saying you have to be, have that much of a blinder on of like, no, unless you are at least 35 years old, we're not going to have no. But don't start sponsoring. And this is just my advice. Don't start sponsoring teen events. Don't start having a teen track in your programming. It will just dilute your brand.
Yeah, I hear you completely. Good, wise words from a successful entrepreneur. I appreciate that, Darrin. Let's talk. Let's make the final chapter of our discussion, CrossFit Games. So you qualified. This is your first year. Like, I'm really just curious on how you're feeling, and have you, given you're still, in your infancy in CrossFit, really, has it really set in on how big of an accomplishment this is to you? Do you feel like you have perspective on that?
I don't have perspective. I mean, after the semifinals board was frozen, like I woke up the next morning, I didn't even look at it. I woke up to text from other people telling me, dude, you qualified. And I was like, no. And then, of course, I was like, okay, well, this is interesting, but there's all kinds of reviews. It's like, I'm going to drop out in some way. Like, even though I was very confident in all of my videos, I was like, I don't know how this all works. There's no way I'm going to the games, guys. Come on. And then sure enough, okay, everything seems to be heading that way, but I'm still not fully buying into it until I got the actual invite. When I got the invite, I think that was the first time I really allowed myself to really feel that joy, just joy of like, wow, this is real. But that did not last. Like full disclosure, 24 to 48 hours later, I was, I guess what people call imposter syndrome or whatever. I was like, I don't deserve to be with these guys. Like I'm happy with how I've progressed, but I don't deserve this. Like there's so many better people than me. Like I went through all of that for a while. I don't think I really communicated it to my buddies that I was feeling that, but I was not, it was almost uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I've only been doing this for 3 years. There's people who've been doing this for 10 or 15 years. They deserve this, not me. And then, I'd have the angel and the devil on my shoulder. And, one would say that, then one would say, but you work really hard, Darrin. And the results are the results. And there's no guarantee. If the workouts were different, maybe you wouldn't have made it. If the workouts were different in a different way, maybe you would have been top 10. So many things align the way they align. Stop second guessing. And I think right now, what has made a difference, we can talk a little bit about how I feel in the acute sense, but I think the question that you're asking, I'm starting, 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away, I'm starting to feel like, okay, I do deserve to be there. And part of that is because I did several other things since then. I did the MFC qualifiers. I did NorCal Classic. I went down to Colombia and did the Latin American Masters Championship. and I did really well in all of those. So I'm like, okay, okay,
Inspiration.
maybe I belong here. Um, I still know, I mean, the top 10 guys in my division are beasts. They're unbelievable, well-rounded athletes. And to just be in the same competition with them is an honor, and it is something I take to heart, that like, okay, not everybody gets a chance to do this, and I don't know what my future is, but I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to do everything I can to come back better next year. But I do think I'm now coming to terms with, yeah, I really did qualify, and I really do deserve to go.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear you say it's setting in because I mean, it is, for me, it's something that was a bucket list item that was a very long game for me. Now, it happened differently than I thought it would. I just said, one day I want to. And then that day was there, and I was very excited about it. But I had been CrossFitting for like 10 plus years. So there was, put in a lot of work and seen these opportunities come and go. And never was I like, this is the year I'm going to go to the games. But things just kind of came together in the right way, and it all happened. I was so excited. What I'm curious, and I think you kind of just teased this a little bit, but are you already, now that you've qualified, are you thinking, next year I want to do this again? Is it too early for that? Or are you like, you know what, I'm just happy to
Yeah.
go to the games, and this is like once I check the list, that's it for me? How
Well,
do
it's
you,
definitely not that.
yes. Okay.
It's definitely not, okay, check the list and now I'm done. It hasn't quite gotten to the point of, okay, now I need to do it again next year. I can't imagine not doing everything in my power to try and have it happen again. But I'm not thinking about it. I mean, I've got the games, I've got MFC, I've got Legends. Um, I might do another couple events in the beginning of the year. Um, I'm
You got,
going to keep training and keep improving. And in the end, it's going to come down to the combination of whether I can go again next year is going to come down to whether I stay healthy, which is a huge factor.
mhm.
Um, whether I stay healthy, whether I work, I don't want to even say hard, work smart enough. I hate that phrase, work smart, not hard. It's true. You can't
Yeah.
just work hard. You have to work hard on the right things.
Mhm.
And how the programming falls out. I've got weaknesses that, yes, if I neglect everything else, maybe I could make them no longer weaknesses. But there's a few weaknesses I have that if next year's programming is heavy on those things, I'm not going to qualify. And I just have to accept that. And I think most of the high level athletes that I've been talking to over the past couple of years, they have weaknesses. Not every one of them is obvious, but at
Mhm.
least they know what their weaknesses are. And even they will say, if you throw too many of my weaknesses at me in the qualifiers and the semifinals, I may not make it next year.
Yeah.
So I think we have to recognize that some of it's out of our hands.
Yeah, 100% the case. You know what? So I'm getting the sense from you that look, you're on a journey and you're going to continue on the journey, and now the outcomes of that we'll just see what they are along the way. But you are committed to a fit lifestyle, and you're going to keep training, and you like the rewards that come along with it, and man, making it to the games, if it's part of the deal, so be it. So that's cool. I'm getting that takeaway from you, and I approach it really similarly. Now, having been to the games, I'm also coming out of that last year going, yep, I want to go back, and I'm really focused, and it adds some hunger and it adds some desire and purpose to my training. I get the sense you're probably going to get some of that coming out of it. I think you're going to go like, well, that was pretty sweet. Especially mentioning the thing that got you into CrossFit was seeing people compete on a stage and going, that's cool. I want to be a part of that. When you experience the games this year, you're going to have that on the biggest stage. And I think you're going to come away from that going, that was cool. I
Yeah,
want
I'm
more.
sure I will. I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited for you. And I'm really excited to be part of the team that's going to create some of the experience for you. The games is a whole animal of its own, but Boulder's going to be there. We've got a really cool plan. We're going to show up and care for our athletes in a way that I hope folks really feel. And yeah, I'm not going to spoil any surprises,
Gotcha.
but there is some cool stuff and things that I know if I was on the receiving end of that, I would go, gosh, somebody went out of their way to make this experience possible for me. And I know how that would make me feel. And I hope that our athletes have an experience like that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, we had that call for the Boulder athletes who qualified, and a couple of things were hinted at there. And yeah, I'm excited. I think, well, that's one of the things. Like I remember, Alan said that at Legends last year. So I was at Legends. Alan was at Legends, but Alan was part of Boulder, and even there, the community environment that Boulder set up, Alan got something out of Legends I didn't. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, me too. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. And I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Cool, me too.
We have scratched a lot of interesting bits from business to entrepreneurship, fitness, and even a little therapy session. I think we snuck in there for a moment. So that was
Yep, I'll send you a check for that.
Team, thanks for checking out the Boulder Athlete Podcast. We are so grateful that you did. Wherever you're watching or listening, please like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more stories from this great community.